Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show.
Something happened to me. I know it doesn't make any sense, but I seem to have fallen through time.
What's your name?
Blair Beecham.
Outlander is the new show from Starz Entertainment, the folks behind Spartacus and Black Sails, and it's all based on these books by Diana Gabaldon. She's an American Scotophile who has a real thing for hot men in kilts and heroines who have bitchy resting face. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What is Outlander, you ask? Well, it's a show about a time-travelling girl who goes from 1945 to 1743 and ends up stuck there with this throng of big, sexy, burly Scottish guys. Sounds a bit like the Edinburgh Festival to me. The hero of our tale is Claire Beecham. She's a nurse in 1945 because it's World War II, so we've got all kinds of Nazis going on, and she doesn't give a stuff about getting blood and guts and gore all over her. She's a practical girl and knows how to keep her head in a crisis, doesn't get bothered by things. That doesn't mean she's boring. Claire can neck a bottle of Lambrini just like it's a hen party outside the classic Grand on a Friday night, because that's the kind of girl she is. You see, Claire's not your average 1940s gal. Her parents died when she was only wee, and because of this, she ended up growing up, a bit like Rachel Weisz in the Mummy films. She was all running in and about tombs, all hanging about lighting fags for her uncle, who looks a bit like, Chips and Beans John Hurt. And she was learning to be a strong, independent woman. If she'd been nowadays, she'd probably grown up to be Lara Croft or something. But as it is, 1940s, she becomes a nurse. Anyway, because Freud was probably right, Claire ends up marrying Frank. He's a dishy wee Oxford professor. He has a lovely car, he treats her right, and he generally isn't adverse to acting like a dafty to cheer her up, and maybe to upset the wee woman who lives downstairs. Nosy old bism. But in his heart, Frank's a professor, so he's kind of about photographs and old castles and history and looking into his family's past, and then wandering around, with a torch and exploring, and doing a little bit of cunnilingus. Get on yourself, love. You look like you're having fun. Anyway, Claire and Frank haven't seen much of each other during the war, so they got back together to have a second honeymoon, to kind of catch up and find out how life's going on, have lots of sex, spend some time spying on hippies, doing all kinds of Beltane shenanigans, getting their marriage back on track. But then Claire ends up going back to the Circle of Stones, touching a magic singing stone, and boom! She wakes up back in time. Of course, that's going to be a shock to anyone's system, and Claire naturally doesn't realise that she's gone back in time, not until she starts getting shot at by a few redcoats, and then she wanders down the road and bumps into and then gets attacked by Frank's great rapey horrible grandpa, Captain of Dragoons, Black Jack Randall. Luckily for Claire, she ends up getting half rescued and half kidnapped by this huge hairy arse Scotsman who knocks her over the head and then takes her back to this cottage where she meets his mates. They turn out to be a bunch of strange hairy locals, the guy who was on The Hobbit playing Dwalin, and of course, Jamie McTavish. Now, just so you know, Jamie, he's a bit of a catch, going to be quite important in the story, and Claire has to get her hands all over his poor wee hurt muscly body, and then, after showing them that she can do that stuff, she's just like one of the lads, and Jamie starts to go a wee bit daft about her. He lets her sit on his horse, wraps her all nice and warm, and then after that, there's a wee bit more riding, shooting some dragoons, bit more of Claire fiddling along with Jamie's sore bits, and then finally they get to the place where they shot Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Phew, all that, and that's just episode 1. So what did I think of the show? Well, I think it looks great. I love the way that they soaked all the colour out of the World War II stuff, and that decision's made it look so different than when Claire's back in time. I think Katrina Balfe, who plays Claire, is absolutely spot on, because I've actually read the books, and she's got that proper iron in her blood and her ice in the veins that Claire really should have. And she's got the proper bitchy resting face as well. Now, Sam Heughan, who plays Jamie, couldn't be more brilliant. Although we've not really seen him do much other than wince and kind of stare at Claire. But, He's huge and he's gorgeous, and that's no bad thing. Now, when I heard that they were shooting Outlander down in Cumbernauld, I was a bit worried they'd make it all twee and all hoochter-toochter nonsense, but this is serious Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones stuff. It looks like a proper, authentic, historical programme, and no bad thing. And overall, I really enjoyed it. But this show's about my grumpy opinions, and I will say I did have some problems with the show. The first problem is that it's so bloody slow to start. I mean, not quite as much as the book, mind, but seriously, I felt like fast-forwarding until Kilty men started running around shooting and stabbing each other. I mean, it's fair enough that they have to go through this to establish Frank as a character, and that Claire really loves him, and that they have a kind of weird relationship, and it's slow going, but, you know, there's real feeling there. And I know that they've cut quite a bit out of that, but seriously, it's so slow. There's just lots and lots of dodging about. It's not, and as I said, it's not as bad as the books. The books really, really take a few chapters to get going, and a lot of people probably give up at that. The other thing is, there's lots of sex in it. Now, I don't mind a bit of shagging, and I have no problem with seeing flesh on display, and I don't care whether it's boys or girls. But the problem with this is, there's 3 different sex scenes, all in the first 20 minutes. And one of them actually had Claire narrating over the top of it, which was so off-putting and had me cringing away on the sofa. But these are kind of small concerns, and for a show like this, on its first episode, it's a grand start, and I can't wait to see episode 2. So till then, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions.